What's up guys and girls, you're listening to Hydra and we're going to be doing a first video of the 5-minute review series for Games Workshop games. Let's get the show on the road with Inquisitor Martyr, the game that brought me from 30 all the way up to 10k subs, so obviously I have a little bit of a history with the game. Let's get talking about it. If you were to come up to me right now and say, Hydra, should I buy this game? What do you think of it? Well, this is what I'm going to say to you. If you're happy with a top-down game that has plenty of 40k fluff that's bundled into one product, including weapons, aesthetic, enemies, characters, lots of voice acting, this game might have some stuff to offer you, and out of all of those things I've mentioned,
you are living on borrowed time, Jukari, but not for long.
I think the voice acting and story is probably, as well as the script obviously that comes alongside that, going to be one of the major selling points for this game. This being said, it's still a top-down game, so you're not perhaps going to get the same level of immersion as you might with something like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. This game, obviously top-down, it's harder to get into the characters, but generally speaking, a nice aesthetic to the game, a nice visual, a nice portrayal of 40k, and especially a very nice script, and some very good humour as well mixed in. That being said, we do need to talk about why the game has some somewhat mixed reception, mixed review, and it always has done. And I'd say this largely comes down to two main things. Firstly, finesse, or lack of, which some people might refer to as clunk. Well, the way in which your character interacts with the world, the way in which you basically bash things on the head or select missions or anything of this nature really. The word clunk has come up here and there, and I think it's fairly evident from the time that the game was first launched at let's face it, a AAA price. It's pretty evident that this was not a AAA refined product in terms of delivery, especially when you compare it to the big boys, D3, PoE, etc. There's a little bit less fluidity here, and it's very apparent when you're bashing one enemy, moving to another, bashing them, they're bashing you in return, that something is generally missing from most of these components, making them feel a little bit more like an indie product. But that being said, I think a little bit of a mention is needed to the 2.0 patch, which came out about 3 or 4 months ago, which went some way to improving the pacing, some of the visuals, and some of the actual core mechanics of the game. Generally speaking, when it comes down to the actual ability design and character design, and this falls under the mechanics, which for me is sort of number 2 on where the game perhaps loses a few brownie points. Well, some of these weapons are very soupy. They all have a mixture of abilities that overlap a lot with other weapons, and you're finding yourself walking around spamming the left click button a little bit too often. It's a problem of some ARPGs, but this perhaps more than any other that I've played. Some of the weapons don't have this issue at all, but others you'll mainly be pressing left click, walking around, kiting. Of course, that's a problem of many range classes, but that's the problem of maybe 90% of range builds in this game. So for me, the game's sort of gameplay loses a few points here, as well as that enemy design wise. You know those moments when you see an enemy, it's got a brand spanking new ability, and you maybe die once or twice trying to figure out, well, how exactly do I deal with this problem? For me, those moments within Martyr are few and far between, and too few and too far between. Although, again, in some of the later content, the enemy design has picked up a few notches, and there's certainly some more stuff to pick up and try and learn and study and sort of get to grips with while playing the game. But still, I think when playing through the game, a lot of the missions and a lot of gameplay will feel very soupy. Not only are you recycling the same kite-style gameplay, you're recycling the same sorts of enemies, and you're seeing a lot of the stuff just being very repetitive. But again, we do have the story at least to help try and mix this up a little bit, and as well as that, a later addition of being able to now play co-op within the game has been a very, very welcome one. You can now play co-op within the story, which for me is going to at least help mitigate some of that sameness by getting another player, at least to add a random variable to what's going on. Now we need to talk about character design a little bit as well, because this is really important for an ARPG, really important. Character design within this game is, like all of the other mechanics, somewhat fallen short, I think, of what was aimed for. You have your skill points, and these are basically optimization points. You have some perks, and these basically change how much damage you deal or how you deal it, and how much damage you receive or how you receive it. It might give you more of one resource, less of another, but generally speaking, let's call it optimization or stat shifting. Lastly, you have a weapon enchant, which might change how a weapon deals, or maybe even introduce a random effect every now and again. Now, all of these added together still make a, let's say, a min-max optimized character and optimized gameplay style. So yes, there is some character building going on, but all of this all still feels a little bit short of the old school ability to swap one weapon ability for another on an ARPG and suddenly feel like, well, now I can push back an enemy and fireball them instead of rooting them and fireball, and the two things will play quite different in terms of combat. For the rooting, you might want to kite. For the blasting back, you might want to move forward. So for me, Martyr kind of lacks that variety, although the Psyker does have more variety than the other classes because you can drop in and drop out various abilities. So that being said, I'd say if you get bored of repetitive gameplay quite quickly and you're a less patient player, Psyker might be slightly better suited. We've obviously got the Tech Adept as well, which has a sort of a hybrid of the two. So we've got a few fixed abilities and a few ones that can sort of be shifted around, and it's a pet class too, so if you like a pet class, it's fairly interesting to play, although for me the build variety seems fairly simple and like everyone's running 2 or 3 builds. But overall for me this game has a nice aesthetic, a nice story to play through, good fun potentially to grind through on co-op, and I would emphasize there's a bit of grinding involved to try and get through those missions to get right the way to the story, but the game has a story mode too, so you can really just focus on that. I would say if you're a long-term ARPG player and you are a player that likes long-term investments from an ARPG, this might not tick that box, as some of the mechanics fall short of making this a game that you can put hundreds of hours into, although I would certainly say for some players that maybe haven't enjoyed D3 PoE quite as much, this game might, due to its quirky mechanics, offer something the others don't, and I've seen plenty of players be able to put a few hundred hours into it without getting bored. But guys, that's a quick summary from me as to what I think of the game. I do think there's certainly a case to be had for playing it, but not everyone's going to enjoy it the same amount, so hopefully that's felt fairly fair and balanced. Hit me up down in the comments below the next game you want to see covered within this short mini-series. Guys, have yourself a great day. See you next time.
Keep hiding in the webway, Jukari.